Hi, welcome to Rocky Mountain Views. I'm your host, Martha Thompson, and today we are sitting with Chris Lynn. And Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
And you do some pretty fascinating work.
I do.
Yes, you do. You do mediumship work. You do readings of Akashic Records. And there are a lot of people saying, Milka, what? You do what? So let's talk about first, what does being a medium mean?
Being a medium means that I have the capacity to make contact with other realms. For instance, I have the ability to make contact with those loved ones that you might have had that have crossed over, and including also the angelic realm and talking with spirit guides. So I have an ability to move in between the worlds, is how you might put it, and gain information that can assist people in their healing, in healing older relationships, for instance.
Is that something you were born with?
I would say it is, because I was that strange little girl who was playing with the dead people in the backyard. Not in a creepy zombie-like way, but I was seeing them. And I was an only child, and so I wasn't distracted by other children, and I could just focus on what was actually there for me. And I set it aside, as many mediums do in their younger years, because you're told you shouldn't be seeing that, or this shouldn't be someone you're having a conversation with. And,
or you're psychotic.
Or you're psychotic, right.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, my family was far worse than me in that realm, so that's
okay, so you got to pass.
So I got to pass. And at some point, it kept coming back in adulthood. And I kept saying, oh, I don't want to deal with this right now. You know, I decided I'm just going to be a healer. I don't really want to talk about those things. And it kept coming back and coming back and coming back. And in terms of people would visit me who were, for instance, I have a client on the table, and someone would come in who had belonged to them, who'd crossed over, and they'd want to relay a message. And so,
by being on the table, you're talking about doing Reiki
healing work. Right, healing work, Reiki work, other
Okay.
types of body work that I do.
Okay.
And, you know, I couldn't deny it any longer. It felt like it was a really important thing to begin to develop, and I was admitted into an advanced mediumship course when I'd never even taken a basic mediumship course.
Wow.
But the teacher, her name is Lisa Williams, she saw something in me. And I will forever give her credit for that, because it allowed me to step into that, which is now my work full-time, mediumship and the Akashic record reading.
Okay, and before we go into the Akashic Records, for those, and I include myself in this, as someone who identifies themselves very strongly as a Christian woman, how is this in line with my Christian values? How do I honor my Christian values and partake in this? Is there a conflict here?
I don't think so. I've had a number of people come to me who are very religious people, but anyone can have the capacity to recognize a message from the other side. It might be a white feather that we would recognize. It might be a penny we see on the ground, that our loved ones extend beyond this earthly plane. And I think that's something to celebrate, honestly. I think it's a beautiful thing.
I agree with you, it's a beautiful thing.
And so I have not noticed a tremendous amount of conflict, and I figure that if people are conflicted about it, they will find someone to work with that will help them heal in the way that helps them heal along their path. So,
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I personally had no issue with it, because my God is a very big God.
Right.
And so I didn't take issue with it and enjoyed it very much. But let's talk about going into the Akashic Records, because I know that you spent a tremendous amount of time studying.
Yeah.
The Akashic Records are, again, the very meaning of that is Sanskrit for the unknown. Yes?
Right. Or also can be interpreted as the ether.
Okay.
So it's got a number of different ways that it could be translated. And in the Sanskrit, someone that I know and appreciate very much, who has studied Sanskrit for many years, I asked her, I said, how do you think it actually translates? And she said it doesn't really literally translate, because it's a feeling. It's an essence. And when we think of ether, that is an essence.
Yes.
And the Akashic Records are where all information is stored. So it's something like a universal supercomputer. We could look at it that way. And in the Bible, since you brought up Christianity, in the Bible it's referred to as the Book of Life.
So this is not contrary in any way, shape, or form.
So.
We do speak to it.
We do.
In all forms of religious practice.
That is
it just has different names.
It does.
Okay.
Right, right. And so it is a vast repository of information of anything that has ever happened. And then specific to us as individuals, everyone's soul has what we might call a book in the Akashic Record. And so that's what I look at. I look at each individual's book, or the record of their soul, from its inception into now, and look at what sorts of things it has had to deal with, what sorts of gifts it has, who this individual is at the level of their soul. So it's a tremendous amount of information, and we can get very specific in terms of the work, or in terms of the information we are trying to gain from it. So I ask very, very specific questions from a very objective perspective, which will lend to a higher degree of accuracy. So the information that comes through is very clean and concise.
And there's work that you do prior to meeting with a client.
I do.
Let's talk about some of that work that you do prior.
I spend approximately an hour to an hour and a half accessing the Akashic Record, accessing that person's particular book of life. And I scan through that book. And I am looking for specific instances that their soul may have experienced over a number of lifetimes. And so it's a lot of questions I ask. I'm literally checking on 40 points at least.
Wow.
When I'm reading the record. I make note of all of these things, and then I work out the soul stories. And so I let the soul story come to me, what happened in particular lifetimes. And then we also get to look at how is this impacting the individual in current time. So
that's my big question is then what's the benefit in that? And I know that so many people, they want to think that they were Joan of Arc or President Lincoln or, someone famous.
We all want to be special.
Napoleon or, whatever.
Right.
I'm sure that's something that you need to overcome.
We all want to be special at some level. There's a part of us that likes that. Strangely enough, I don't have that phenomenon with people coming in, they're Marie Antoinette or someone extremely important. We all have a soul. We're just a soul wandering around, and we take on different bodies and we learn about ourselves. So sorry, I'm just going to have to come back to what your original question was.
Sure.
What was the essence?
It's just what is the benefit?
What is the benefit? The benefit is that we often get stuck in life. We read all the right books. We take all the right classes, and we're trying really hard to be good people. We go to church. We have a spiritual practice. We have recovery. Whatever all of these things are, we're really trying to get better, but sometimes we just can't overcome something that we can't even see. And a lot of times, there'll be issues that are held in a past life that are influencing current time, influencing our behavior, influencing who we draw into our lives in terms of relationships, for instance. Wow. And so learning about these things will bring a conscious awareness so that we can say, aha, that's what it is. From conscious awareness, we are then at choice to release it, right?
Well, certainly once we know what the issue is, because if I'm just looking at the entirety of my life today, but something keeps coming up, some pattern keeps repeating, and I know that I've worked, and I've done a tremendous amount of spiritual work. I hold a degree in psychology. That's how I've spent my life.
Right.
And yet, I can tell you that there are things that, I'll be darned. I do it again, and I do it again.
Yeah, it's repetition compulsion.
And so you start thinking, okay, did this get burned in my brain when I was 3? Where does this come from?
And sometimes these things are early childhood influence, as you would know from your experience in psychology. That's an incredibly
it's a possibility.
Vulnerable and open time for us as humans. And yet, that's not the whole picture.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's more, though, that you disclose when you're doing a reading.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about what's happened in a past life and the problems that someone's experiencing. You give them quite a bit more information. Let's talk about some of the things that they get to find out.
Some of the fun things that we get to find out is who we are at the level of our soul. Every soul, when it is created, has a particular mission in life, and it has a particular set of gifts that it really desires lifetime after lifetime to express for itself. Sometimes those can be strong elements of being in service to humanity, for instance, and that's actually something I relate to very closely. It's like I know my soul is here to help people in the big picture. These are some of the things that we learn. We learn where our soul comes from. We can learn about instances of incarnation that were particularly good for us. And we might learn about mystery schools, for instance, that our soul got to study in. We came into certain lifetimes where we learned esoteric knowledge that was less inhibited, or we would be less inhibited by that than sometimes we are by religion. And so it's like our soul gets to grow and express itself. So these are fun things we get to learn about. We get to learn also about our spirit guides, how many spirit guides are around us at this time. And that can be very soothing for people to recognize that they are not alone in their experience. And we have the essence of God around us guiding us. And we also have beings that help us as well.
That's beautiful.
It is beautiful. Yeah.
And with soul levels, what is their scale, like 1 to 10? I mean, how does that work?
Soul levels. Well, there are certain vibrations that our souls can experience and can express at. So we might have a more fourth dimensional understanding. We might have sometimes a more fifth dimensional understanding. And fifth dimensional understanding generally will mean that you're on a conscious spiritual path and that your soul is reaching, it is being fed continually from a higher plane of knowledge.
Okay.
Such as, for instance, where the Akashic Records reside are in the fifth dimension. And so it's a non-physical reality, more of a spiritual experience.
So that person may find it easier to make that connection themselves, even through meditation, through work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. What about the times that people find something out that is difficult to hear?
I do my best to deliver it in a way that is kind and so that they don't feel badly about choices that they may have made in the past. There's no need for any of us to beat ourselves up over choices we've made. We've ultimately learned from those choices, even if they weren't very pretty at that time. And so I tend to deliver work very kindly.
I'm sure you do. No, I know you. So I can't imagine that you would be unkind, but I would think that is a very difficult part of your work.
There are hard things to convey. The pictures will often come to me of things that have happened that are shocking to look at, to be honest. And I just have to let that roll off of me and just let them know that it's all right that this happened. And your soul is learning this, this, and this as a result of it. And your life is being impacted now in this way, and so let's let that go. Yeah. So hard things happen to people. And
they do.
Of
course they do.
Right. And when something is existing in the Akashic Record, if I am tracking it at that level, it's left a mark on the soul. And it means it was a very significant event. So coming back to what you were saying earlier about past lives and being Napoleon and these larger than life things are. Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
It's okay. I've got another great question for you.
Okay,
we'll just dive into that and it'll come back to you.
You're right. That's always how it happens. Okay, thanks.
What about people who have come into this lifetime and have faced incredible physical challenges and illnesses that just, every facet of their life has been around that? Is that something that they chose?
It is probably not something that they intentionally chose. No one wants to suffer. I really don't believe that. However, there are things like vows, for instance, that we might locate in the Akashic record. My soul may have taken a vow for suffering at some point inside of an incarnation, perhaps related to a church or some kind of a religious order, where I might have taken a vow for suffering, and I did that with the best of intentions, and I made that vow to God as I understood God at that time. The challenge is we usually make those with a high degree of emotion behind them and a tremendous amount of commitment, and they stick. And so that we can really carry that energy, it's an energetic imprint. We can carry that from one life into the next. And so we may experience that suffering and not understand why, because we're not bad people. We don't have some genetic predisposition to this disease or this disorder.
Right. And it's not someone being neurotic. It's very real.
It's very real. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's, it brings up fairness. How does that even take place? Is it a karmic debt? So those are the kinds of questions that I think of if you're going to talk about past lives. Do we pay for something in this life that we've done in the last life?
There is such a thing as karma. I do believe that. When something shows up in the Akashic record as karma, I can't clear someone's karma. They're going to have to live through the experience that heals that for them. However, sometimes there is an unjustified karma where something may have happened and we take it a little too seriously. We feel guilty for way too long, for instance, lifetimes. And that is something that we can release. That is something that creates a great deal of suffering for people.
And that brings me to the clearing work that you do. Let's talk about that. What is clearing? How does that work? How does it first come to you? And how do you know what to clear?
By reading the Akashic record, as I stated earlier, we look at what the gifts of the soul are. Then we look at blocks and limitations and restrictions that are existing around you currently, as they are related to something that may have happened in a past lifetime. Okay. So I look at these blocks and restrictions, and these can be cleared. And so the clearing occurs at the level of the Akashic record. The same place I go to get this information is the same place we go to do a clearing. So when I do the reading for someone before they come in, I provide the clearing. I clear their record. Now, it's not me specifically being all-powerful to be able to do such a thing.
You're the conduit.
Exactly, I'm a conduit. I'm working with higher energies. I'm working with guides. I'm working with the angelic realm to assist someone in clearing that record. It's a matter of accessing grace.
Yes.
Right? So it's like it doesn't get any better than grace.
No.
Now, the other aspect of the clearing is that the client needs to do their own work with it. So I give them a 21-day homework assignment. And the 21 days allows us to reformat our thinking. It allows us to create a new habit. It helps the mind get ready to let go of what it has become very accustomed to in terms of habits, right? In terms of
And we are creatures of habit.
We are creatures of habit. That's just what we're all about.
Right. I am.
Yeah, I am too. So we need those sorts of things. We need those sorts of rituals to help our mind and to help particularly our subconscious mind let go, because there can be resistance. If we've gotten accustomed to thinking a certain way over time, maybe that comes from a past life. Maybe it's from earlier in this life. But that's a hard thing to let go of for the subconscious and for the ego self. It doesn't want to die. So we...
Oh, no.
Right?
Oh, no.
So that would
Absolutely
be
not
the worst thing for it at all. So we have to help train it, in a sense, to be able to let go of these circumstances. And I find that people take that homework really seriously, and that when they're actually done with the process and they're not doing it any longer, they miss it a little bit.
Really?
It makes a big difference. You get to clear the same thing I do. Inside of that homework process, you are, through a prayer that I give you, you are accessing the Akashic Records yourself. You're reaching up into your own soul's history. And I think that's very, very empowering and really beautiful.
Absolutely, because I think there's nothing worse than feeling set up where the only way that I feel that I can improve my life and get better is through this person. Because, well, first things, red flags start flying for me like crazy. That just doesn't work with me. Because God doesn't work to me in that way. So, that's just nuts. that's someone trying to take advantage. And so I love it that that's not your goal in any way, shape, or form, and I know that it's not who you are.
Right.
So
yeah. Not in this life, let me tell you.
Kudos, may I tell you, you're a beautiful person, and let me tell you, folks, you can trust Chris. Her integrity is bar none, and I know that personally. So that people go home, they do this work, and then they start to see the fruits of the clearing work that you've done. Is that the vast majority of what they're experiencing, or that they are starting to be able to access these records themselves, or all the above? Talk to me about what what happens.
Really all of the above, truly.
Okay.
Some people are quite stimulated to continue to further their understanding of the Akashic Records. They may choose to actually study this on their own, to study this particular method of soul realignment, for instance. It's very inspiring for people once they recognize how empowered they can become. What will happen is generally the clearing work occurs, it leaves an opening in your life for you to make more positive choices. That's really it. If we have the clearing and we don't accept responsibility for creating better choices around, say, a relationship, for instance, then we're going to draw back into our experience the same thing we have been dealing with all along. And so there's enough of a clearing with grace for you to step forward in courage and say, I want to do this differently now. And so there's all kinds of choice there, right? Because we're never victims in all of this. And
I don't believe in being a victim.
It's
we always have a part.
We always do. And it's usually a big part. It's usually the 100% part, you know, because it's our experience. And at some level we owned this, even with regard to past life things. You know, we made a choice. We made a choice for the vow, right? We made a choice for the contract. That's another piece. We look at how people have contracted to show up lifetime after lifetime with each other to work on an issue. That's not always positive, really. In fact, much of the time it isn't. It keeps those souls locked in. It keeps them locked.
See, and I've always heard when people speak of this that there is a certain group that you incarnate with.
That would be your soul group.
Yes.
Right.
And that it's not a negative.
That is not a negative. A soul group or a soul family is not a negative, because they're kind of your tribe. They're your set of actors you move with from lifetime to lifetime.
And they're the people that you recognize where there's no reason why you'd recognize.
Yeah.
And are just comfortable with and seem to know.
Right. That's your soul family. And that's different than creating a contract.
Okay.
So a contract may be created in terms of a soulmate contract, not always positive, keeps those people locked in. And also there's a contract of healing or a contract of protection. Well, we don't need to create those things over and over. And in fact, contracts are something that modern day souls don't necessarily set up for themselves. That's an old school thing. When I see a contract show up in the record, it's almost always a past life incident.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you see people in the flesh today, you don't necessarily see that they're under any kind of contract. That's rare?
Not a current life contract.
That's what I'm speaking of.
Right. So there could be a past life contract that is influencing them.
But in this lifetime, you're not seeing contracts.
Rarely.
Okay. So we are evolving spiritually.
We really are. And that's the whole point, right?
Okay.
And many of us come here to the earth plane, to this existence, to share a higher vibrational knowledge. You know, for everybody. That everybody here gets to learn about themselves and gets to learn how to love themselves and gets to recognize that they are a soul and that their soul has a particular beautiful essence it's trying to express.
That's fantastic. Okay, so for somebody to come and see you, how do they first contact you? Because I know you have a site.
Yeah, I do have a site.
Okay.
I just changed my website name.
And that is?
BlueJeanMystic.com.
Okay, BlueJeanMystic.com.
Right.
All right.
Absolutely.
And that has all of the information. Does it have frequently asked questions on it?
It does not yet.
Not yet, but it will.
I'm going to tell you, I have been so busy doing soul realignment work that I
I'm not
haven't had
surprised.
time to update my website.
Okay,
It's
but
really
they can-
become like that. But you're going to get all the information that you need. And they can always contact me too. There's a contact page. They can send an email. My phone number is on there. I'm happy to talk with people about what the potential would be for them with this work. In addition to
Super.
the mediumship work that I do also, and I do some hands-on healing work as well, which is all part of the bigger picture of healing who we are as a soul.
Okay, so they can discuss with you what their issues are and make an informed choice.
Absolutely.
In working with you with your many, many gifts that I know that you have.
I've been at this a while. You know, I really have, surprisingly. I'm in my 25th year, and it's so hard to believe.
It's hard to believe looking at you unless you started in high school.
Right.
So, yeah, I
Thank
agree
you.
with
It wasn't too far out of high school, but.
Yeah, because you're a young girl. Okay, all right. So, and then they go home and do their homework, and the rest is up to them.
The
You know,
rest is up
because
to
we
them.
need to participate in our own lives.
We do. That's just it. And so there have been people I've worked with which I suspect they were thinking that this clearing would just make everything okay. And yet there might have been some resistance to fundamental change for them. So we're always empowered individually. And also I want people to know that when I do this work, I set up a follow-up appointment so that they have time to talk with me. 15-20 minutes is all it will take, maybe 2 or 3 weeks into their process, so that they feel like they are held in this process, because we're talking about changes at the soul level, and that's very big. It's very beautiful.
It's enormous.
But it can really rock your world sometimes.
Yes.
And so I really want people to know that I'm there to support them through that and to offer any advice that might be useful.
All right, so you're hearing her. She's telling you, first she's going to do a tremendous amount of work before you ever get there. Then she's going to sit down and go through all the information that is needed to explain the answers to your questions. And then Chris is going to follow up and really help you dig deep, and so that you can move further in your own growth. And having spent time with you and having had a reading with you, I can tell you it was mind-boggling. And there were things that there were things that I suppose if you were a private detective you could have known. But there was one thing in particular that there was no way on earth that Chris could have known, and she did like the back of her hand. So I'm a believer.
Oh,
And you
great.
did, and you did talk to me in a way that was incredibly loving and kind, and walked me through that, because part of that was very difficult to hear. And it can only serve to help me. So we're going to put up all of the information about you on our site.
Thank
I
you.
urge people to go in and meet with Chris Lynn. Call her up. You're going to find out she's the real deal. And that's it for today. But give Chris a call. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Rocky Mountain Views. Till next time.